Hi there, and welcome to this broadcast. I am Shauna K. Lester, the founder of Memorable Essay and the creator of the IMG Residency Match Application Accelerator. I hope that everybody is safe. If you're watching this, I hope you're safe, far away from coronavirus, you and the persons who you love. And if you happen to be someone who is providing medical care to others during this time, thank you so very much, and I hope that you keep yourself safe. So if you're in the process of trying to put together your residency application, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So you're putting together your residency application and you find that you are struggling to put it together to make it work. This broadcast is for you. We're going to be talking about 3 reasons that you'll struggle to make your application stand out, because you really don't have to make that whole process be a struggle. All right, so we'll jump right into it. So the first reason that I wanted to talk about in terms of you struggling to put together your ERAS application is the order in which you're doing things. So when it comes to putting together your residency application, there isn't a firm right or wrong way to do things. It just depends on how you think that things can be most easily done. So what people will do, I find, is that they might start with requesting their letters of recommendation from people who they think are going to be, good writers, maybe just jotting down ideas here and there for their personal statement while updating their CV with things that they did, a while ago and probably just didn't bother or stop to put them on. So all 3 of those things are sort of going on at once, and so it becomes a little bit difficult to see yourself making progress in any one particular area. So the way that I encourage persons to do this instead, as I said, it isn't a right or wrong, but I find that this works pretty well for people, is to actually start with your personal statement first and then have everything else take its cue from the personal statement. And when I say everything else, I mean your CV, I mean your interview responses, I mean your MSPE or your dean's letter, and I also mean your letters of recommendation. And why that is because all of your written application and then going on to your interview, that's an opportunity for you to speak for yourself in your voice. When it comes to your letters of recommendation, that's a chance for individuals to speak about you in their voice, as encouraged and guided by you. And so you want to have a sort of central place from which everything takes its directive, and that thing and that hub would definitely be your personal statement. So my encouragement to you is to start with one thing in order to be successful with that one thing and finish it. And then that one thing would be your personal statement, instead of trying to do all of the things at the same time, or starting with your letters of recommendation when you actually really do not yet know what you want to tell your recommenders to write on your behalf. Some recommenders will allow you to give them more guidance than others, but regardless, you need to give some guidance, and that's hard to do when you yourself haven't yet sorted out what you're going to say. The second reason that you'll struggle to get your ERAS application to stand out is that you don't focus on messaging first. So if you've ever tuned into any of my videos, watched any of my lives before, you know that I'm always talking about messaging, especially when it comes to the residency process, to your main message. You really want to get that main message done. You want to have one, first of all. You want to have a main message, and you want to get your main message done right. When your main message is done right, it communicates to programs why they should choose you above choosing anybody else, right? So you're going to struggle to make your application stand out if you do not lead with messaging first. So first of all, if you don't have a main message, the odds of you standing out are pretty low. Because if you're not deliberate about figuring out what is it about me that makes me stand out above all the other candidates, you're not going to happen to come up on that, right? It's something that you have to be very deliberate about creating. Now, you want to also start by creating it first, because you don't want to be in the middle of trying to put together your personal statement, and that's when you're like, oh, what should this sound like? What should I say? What really makes me stand out? If that is not done first, you'll find yourself starting your personal statement over, starting it over. Or maybe you write a few paragraphs and they don't sound right, and then you write a few more to try and make them sound right. You shuffle them around because you don't want to start over, but it's still not sounding right. It's still not sounding memorable. You know within yourself that it's not something that stands out, and that's because it's not the writing that's the problem, but it's the messaging that's the problem. So you always want to start with focusing on the main message, creating a main message that is then communicated in your personal statement, in your CV, in your letters of recommendation, and in your interview. And then everything will flow from there once you have the message down first. The other thing, which is the third thing that will make you struggle, or the reason you're struggling now if you're doing it, to put together an ERAS application that stands out, is not knowing the tools that enable you to make your communication memorable. And so this is really important because oftentimes I come across IMGs who will talk about struggling to put together their application. The personal statement isn't coming together. The CV is looking pretty regular schmegular, even though they did the same thing as their classmates who have put together their CVs, and their CV might sound better, right? Or if it's around interview season, it's like, well, I can't quite figure out how to make this sound better. But if we think about what you're doing right now with your written application, specifically with your personal statement, with your CV, with your letters of recommendation and your dean's letter, it doesn't come down to your writing skill. So it's not because you don't speak English well. It's not because you've never been a good writer. It's not because you hate writing. It's not because you struggle to express yourself. It's not because it just refuses to come together. It's oftentimes really just a lack of awareness of the tools that make writing memorable, and actually the tools that make all communication memorable. And so I'm going to talk about those tools right now. Just give you a quick breakdown. So one of the primary tools that will help you to make your personal statement memorable is clarity. And that comes back to having a main message, but really being clear from the outset about what you're going to say in the overall personal statement, and then in every paragraph of that personal statement to get to the main message is really important. So if you're not clear, you'll forever be fumbling. If you're not clear, your CV is going to look a mess. It's going to be all over the place because you don't know what kind of first impression you're trying to create. Clarity is one of the most important tools that you have at your disposal when you want to be memorable. There are also very important tools like authenticity, making sure that you're talking about something that you're really into. So that goes back to, the specialty that you're choosing, but it's normally very hard to sell a commitment to a specialty that you really are not committed to. The inauthenticity is going to be a problem, right? But you really want to focus on, whenever possible, being as authentic as possible in your writing, in your communication. That's always going to make it stand out. You want to have anecdotes, because the anecdotes are also going to help you to be memorable. The anecdotes are always going to help you to be memorable. In fact, they're going to be one of the most important tools that you can use to be memorable. And a fourth tool that's very important when it comes to being memorable is specificity. So when you're writing about things like your patient encounters that made you decide to choose a specialty, when you're talking about the different challenges in the specialty that made you decide to commit to it, you need to have a certain level of specificity. And when you do, that's how people know that you're not lying, because anybody can say that they have a commitment to X or Y specialty, but if you cannot back that up with specific information, then it's not likely for people to believe you. And it's also not something that stands out when there's a lack of specificity, because then you're speaking in very general terms that really fly over people's head, and it does not stand out. It is not memorable, right? So you being able to put together a piece of writing that is memorable is very much less about your raw writing skills and more about the tools that you are employing to make that writing memorable. All right. So if you find that you're struggling with putting together your ERAS application, it could be because of three things. It could be the order in which you're doing things, right? Brainstorming here, writing a few paragraphs there, asking for your letters of recommendation over here, dusting off your CV over here in this corner. You really want to just stop instead and pick one thing to focus on to start with, from which everything else takes its cue. And my recommendation to you in terms of what I've seen work with my clients is to start with your personal statement and make that personal statement the hub, the one thing that you get over, right? You get it done before you start the other things. And when you're looking at how the other things should be shaped, all of it comes from your personal statement. So when people are going to write you letters of recommendation and they'll ask to see your personal statement, most of them, or for you to just give them an idea of why you're applying to what you're applying to, the personal statement becomes what you give to them and where they take their writing cues from. The other reason that you will struggle to put together an application that stands out is not focusing on messaging first. That's what I had as point 2. And so what that is, when you don't focus on messaging first, is if you write down notes and then you sit to brainstorm. Then you start thinking, well, what do I want to say with this, when you're halfway through preparing that personal statement. And so how you want to fix this is to start the application process, the process of working on your application, by first creating a main message. And the main message is what you communicate to programs about your unique value, meaning what can they get from you that they cannot get from any other applicant to their program. There needs to be something that says, this is the value I bring, this is why I need to match, this is what, I'm going to get out of the residency experience that's going to make me such and such a person in the future. You want to spend a lot of time on getting your messaging right, because after that, it's very easy for everything else to come together for the rest of the application season, all the way through to your interviews until match day. All right. And the third reason that you're struggling is not knowing certain tools that you can use to make your writing memorable. And we went over 4 of those tools, with the most important one being clarity. You want to be clear about what you're communicating in your personal statement, in your CV, what you're asking your letter writers to communicate as well, what you're going to communicate in your interviews. And out of that clarity, and by using all of the other tools available to you, you'll then be able to be memorable. So thanks for tuning in, and if you're watching this on the replay, thank you for watching. There's a link below this video for persons if you are ready to stop struggling with your match application, with your residency application, and get it done in a couple of weeks. I'd love to talk with you. So you just click that link and apply for a free consultation. And if you haven't got it yet, try your very best to stay corona free. All right, take care. Bye.